In this video, I wanted to talk about two different types of teaching strategies that you can use with young children: direct and indirect strategies. And then I'll also give advantages and disadvantages of both. So the first one is the direct approach, or otherwise known as teacher-led. And in this approach, the teacher is needed to give instruction. So the child needs to listen to the teacher to learn information, skills, how to do something, and just that there's a teacher there to help them to directly teach the child. So let's talk about the advantages of the direct approach. So first, it uses time efficiently, because sometimes you don't have a long time for a lesson and you want to be able to teach the children as a group or individually, and you have a limited amount of time. And so with the direct approach, because you're telling the child what to do and they're just following, you can use your time more efficiently and control that time a little bit better. The second benefit for the direct approach is that children learn through modeling. So some of you may have learned about Vygotsky and guided participation, when the child is modeling after the adult to learn how to do something, like maybe plant a seed or something, and they're just doing exactly what the adult is doing. And so that is an advantage of the direct approach. The third one is that it produces uniform results, which sometimes doesn't sound that great because it just sounds like everything is going to come out the same, but sometimes you need that. And so, for example, maybe you are teaching the children a dance to perform at the end of the semester to show their parents, and so you need the performance to look a certain way, and so you are going to use the direct approach to get that performance to look the way that you want it to look. The fourth advantage is that if you need to have the child have a correct answer or a correct product to do something correctly, then the direct approach is useful. So for example, if you want to teach the child how to tie their shoelace, you're not just going to hand them the shoe and the shoelace and say, hey, go figure it out. You're going to teach them, right? So you're going to have them maybe do the bunny ears, do the loops, and then to just be able to loop it around and then produce the bow and the knot. That is important to have a good shoe that is tied. The fifth advantage is that it teaches children how to follow directions, because following directions is important. So sometimes a child will need to follow directions, and so when you use a direct approach, the child is not only learning the skill that you have, but they're learning how to follow directions to get the desired results. And so following directions is a skill that the child should learn how to do. And then the last one, the sixth advantage, is that this method lends itself to immediate evaluation, meaning you can tell right away if the child has learned it. So for example, back to the shoelace, if you show them how to loop with the bunny ears, and then you show, and they model after you and they do it, and then you see that they've done it, and then you can say, okay, now let's see you do your other shoe, and you see them struggling because you're not there to model it, then you realize, okay, they really haven't learned it on their own. And then so then you'll need to show them again, but you can tell right away if they have learned it. So those are 6 advantages for the direct approach. Now there are disadvantages to the direct approach, or the teacher-led, and I'm going to give you 3. The first one is that it doesn't allow the child to be creative or to have self-expression, because the teacher is deciding what is the child going to make, what is the child going to learn, what is it going to look like after we're done with this lesson. So it does limit the child's creativity and self-expression. The second disadvantage is that it does limit individual differences in development and ability levels, because you are just assuming that all the children are able to do what you want the child to do, and you're not taking into consideration each child's ability level. And it's just, like I said before, a uniform approach, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but the individual differences sometimes do need to be taken into consideration, and so the direct approach doesn't allow for that as much. The third disadvantage is that it focuses more on the product, the end result, rather than the process. So you're looking to, okay, if you want the children to create something for art, you just want them to make that, whatever it is that you want them to make, right? And so you just want to see it done. And remember, you want to use your time efficiently and stuff, but it focuses on the product. Oh, good, you're done. Okay, you're done. Now, okay, and you're seeing that they're done, but then the process of learning is not fully taken advantage of with the direct approach. So those are 3 cons of the teacher-led method. So with the indirect strategy, or child-centered, there are 2 types that I will be discussing. The first one is guided discovery, and the second one is exploration. Guided discovery, like direct teaching, are both convergent ways of thinking, meaning that the teacher has a specific task or an end result or a concept in mind. And so an indirect strategy for teaching the child how to get to that certain result that you would like would be guided discovery. So that's when you have something in mind that you want the child to learn, but instead of directly teaching them, hey, 5 plus 3 equals 8, you let them discover it themselves. And so you lead the child through questions and challenges towards the discovery of that task. So instead of saying, hey, 5 plus 3 is 8, you can just ask them, what is 5 and 3 added together, or what is 5 plus 3? And then they'll tell you. Maybe they can tell you the correct answer, maybe they tell you the wrong answer. But in both cases, you can ask them, how do you know? Show me. And then you can use manipulatives. The child can maybe group the blocks or whatever you've given them into 5 and then 3 and then adding them together, or maybe they just tell you verbally. But in that way, you'll understand, do they truly understand what is 5 plus 3? Or maybe if they just guessed the number 8 correctly. So through guided discovery, you can help the child to learn to go through the process of learning instead of just focusing on the product. The second type of indirect teaching strategy, or child-centered learning, is exploration. Now, exploration is something that the child can do when you have no correct answer or solution in mind. You just want the child to explore and to be able to come up with a variety of different solutions. Some examples of exploration strategies is to ask the child, hey, what would you like for your superhero power? Because there's no right or wrong answer. They can say, I want to fly, or I want to be able to be invisible, or I want to be able to turn things into food. I don't know, but there's so many wonderful superhero powers, and you can just see what creative things that the children come up with. Or with a rhythm stick, you can say, what kind of sounds can you make with the rhythm stick? And then they can just tell you anything that they want to. You're not directing them to a particular solution, but just any sound. Or maybe they even play with it, or just they can tap it on whatever and make different sounds. So that would be another example of exploring sounds with a rhythm stick. So there are definitely advantages to the indirect approach, both for the guided discovery and for exploration. And I'm going to give you 7. So the first reason, or the first advantage, is that it enhances critical thinking skills, because the child is learning. It's a process, and so they're trying to figure out the solution. So the critical thinking is important to develop in the process of learning. And then the second advantage of the indirect approach is that it reduces a child's fear of failure, because a lot of times, especially with the exploration strategy, there is no right or wrong answer. So the child doesn't have to be afraid that they're going to give the wrong answer. Even with a guided discovery, when you are trying to guide the child to the correct answer, there's ways to help them to express themselves and to be able to explain. So if we're doing the example again of 5 plus 3, and maybe they tell you it's 7, and then instead of telling them, no, that's wrong, it's 8, you can ask them, well, how did you get to that? Can you show me how 5 plus 3 is 7? And then they can use blocks, they can use manipulatives, or they can just explain it to you. And sometimes I find that when the child is explaining it, they realize, oops, it's not 7, it's 8. I forgot to count this block. So but they don't have a fear of failure because they were allowed to make the mistake and then to learn from it. And then a third advantage of the child-centered approach is that it does allow for individual differences among children, especially if you're making a craft or even with music. If they're like making a song or playing an instrument, it allows for the individual differences that are definitely apparent in each child. And then it allows for participation and success for all children. So again, reducing that fear of failure, allowing the child to participate and feel successful in their participation. And the fifth advantage of using the child-centered approach is that it helps the child to develop self-confidence and independence, because now that the fear of failure has been reduced and they are able to express their individual differences and to be able to participate, then they can develop that self-confidence and independence that are skills that they will need as they grow up. Another advantage is that it allows the child to develop patience with themselves and with others, because it is a process and there's questioning and it does take time, that they are patient with themselves, that they know that it's going to take time to get to a certain product or solution, and then also waiting for others, because some children may be faster, but some may be slower than them. And so to be able to wait and to develop that patience for others, that is critical also. And then the last advantage, the seventh reason, is that it leads to acceptance of other people's ideas. So if you allow the child or the children to make a craft and each child is producing something else, and you praise each and every child for producing whatever it is that you're making, then the children will know that, hey, you know, my creation isn't the correct one. There's different ways to look at things and different ways to create something. So those are 7 advantages of the indirect approach. So with so many advantages of the indirect approach, are there disadvantages? I'm going to give you 2. So the first one is that it does require more time, because in order for the child to explore or to be able to come up with different possible solutions, it does require more time, or it can require more time. And so because it requires more time, the second disadvantage is that the teacher must be more patient, and the teacher has to practice this patience in order for the child to learn effectively with this strategy. I hope this video was able to teach you the difference between the direct approach, or teacher-led, and the indirect approach, or child-centered. Thank you for watching.